In today's episode, I sit down with Gilda Perez Alvarado, the CEO of Orient Express and Group Chief Strategy Officer of Accor International. 2 years ago, Gilda took a leap of faith, leaving a 19-year career at JLL where she rose to the level of CEO to follow her passion for hotels while finding her next great challenge. A self-described underdog, Gilda shares the global strategy for Accor and gives listeners a deeper look into Accor's rich portfolio. I especially enjoy our conversation around new partnerships being launched by Accor and other large hotel brands. I hope you enjoy it. And with that, let's get on with the show. Well, welcome back to another episode of Not Done. I'm Sloan Dean, and today I'm excited to have on Gilda Perez Alvarado, Chief Strategy Officer at Accor and CEO of Orient Express. Before joining Accor, she spent almost 2 decades at JLL, rising to lead their hotels and hospitality business. Gilda, welcome to the show. And I thought
Thank
we'd
you.
start with, did you always know you wanted to be in hotels?
Not really, no. It happened in my first day at Cornell.
Did you just happen to show up in Ithaca and you said, you know what, I can make a living out of this?
To be fair, I grew up around the hotel industry. My grandmother owned a hotel and a restaurant when I was a small child in Costa Rica. And my mom was a manager of the biggest hotel in Costa Rica, which at the time had 300 rooms. I went to Cornell to be a biochemist. And the first day in class, I was a January freshman. I decided that I should not be a chemist and actually I should go to the hotel school. The epiphany hit me a bit late, but just in time to make a career switch.
What was the epiphany? How does that happen?
It was January, Ithaca. I was in organic chemistry. Professor showed up, didn't really say hello, went straight to the chalkboard. And there were 10 people around me. No one said hello or anything like that. Everybody, I guess, was shy. And I looked at the clock and I said, oh my God, I'm going to be working in this environment forever. This is not for me. And in a little bit of, let's call it the first existential crisis, I called my parents. I think it's the most expensive collect call they've ever received. And we decided that I was at Cornell, lo and behold, best hotel school worldwide. And that's what happened.
What was the hotel in Costa Rica?
It was called Hotel Irazú. That's where my mom worked. And my grandmother, Hotel El Corral.
Is it still operating today?
No, it got redeveloped, but it was a great hotel. We have many good memories there as a child.
I'm sure. I got the opportunity when I was at Remington to operate a few hotels in the country. I feel like in the last decade, Americans in particular have woken up to what an amazing country Costa Rica is. The ecotourism there is amazing.
I recommend everybody to go see it. It's the size of West Virginia, so it's small.
Then you go to JLL. Did you always aspire to be a CEO? Or is it one of those things that you were just an ambitious person and one thing led to the next?
I don't know. Yes, I am very ambitious. I am very competitive. I like to compete with myself. I was very into sports when I was little. I used to be a swimmer. I blame my parents for it. I think they've always, they've had a very, very high bar for me since I was little. An A was not an A plus. An A plus had to be the A plus. I'm the firstborn child. So I don't know that I said, oh, I want to be a CEO or the CEO, but hey, why not?
So you fast forward, you're at Accor, chief strategy role. Love the title. What does it mean? What are you working on in the context of Accor? And then also you're CEO of Orient Express.
I joined Accor in October 2023 after speaking with Sebastian Bazan, our chairman, for 6 years. I got to the point at JLL, I was in my 19th year, an amazing run. I said, okay, what else can I do to keep on growing and learning and contributing? One of the options was to expand within real estate and do all asset classes, cross-border investment sales, which is what I specialized in. And I said, okay, well, that sounds really interesting. I like global. I need a global career. That's, my forte and what I really love doing. But I am not necessarily super interested in the other asset classes. I'm not as passionate about logistics or multi-housing as much as I am hotels. So, I was 43 at the time and I wanted to maybe move back to Europe. This was a great challenge. That 5-year thorn was still in there, and I said, what the hell, this is a great opportunity, it's going to be fun, I will definitely learn, which is fundamental principle, non-negotiable, number one career decision I needed to learn. So decided to come to Accor to see the operational side of the business. What I was bringing to the table was the global relationships, deal making, relationship with owners, and a US-based perspective. I had always worked from the US. There was a 3-year stint at JLL where I was in Europe, but always from the US. I'd like to say I was raised in a New York corporate way of doing things. I could bring that different perspective, different context to Accor. Third week into the job, I was having breakfast with him and he said, you know what, starting in January, you're also going to be running Orient Express. And I said, oh. And, I can tell you, he really did not like the reaction. It wasn't a negative or a positive reaction. It was just a surprise and more pressure on my shoulders because this is a project that is very near and dear to him. It all made sense afterwards because this is one of the most strategic investments that Accor has ever done. One, it positioned us in the ultra luxury sector, and two, we're now investing in multimodal travel journeys. So in addition to hotels, we have trains, we have yachts. We were also in the process of finding a joint venture partner for the brand, and so LVMH came on board. And so this became one of the biggest projects we've done. So you asked, what does a chief strategy officer do? I would say a few things. One is you basically have to be a runner, and you have to be spending time in the industry, understanding the latest trends, not just for hospitality, but from a macroeconomic perspective that could have an impact in the business, and you have to feed that information to the team. Similar to what we did at JLL, where we had the global desk. My team, the strategy team, is a transversal group team, and so whatever information we get or lead, we just give to the various departments to make sure that we're not working in silos. We are one of the biggest hotel companies worldwide, the biggest in Europe, and there are markets that are very strategic to Accor that need further development. We also want to grow our share of wallet with some of the investors that I was working with before, or diversifying our investor base. So those are the specific areas of focus. Also, if there's a special project and our chairman or, anybody needs help, that's when the team gets called. What's nice about working in this team is that it's a team of teams. And so depending on the project or the task, we will, staff it with the various other departments of Accor. I would say the greatest thing of the role at the beginning was that I got to have a stratospheric view of the business. And the good thing about working in a startup like Orient Express, which is a complicated startup because it's a heritage brand of 140 plus years, is that I went from stratosphere to the trench because we got very, very granular. And so I couldn't have asked for a better 2+ years.
I would love to be a fly on the wall in some of your meetings. I'm kind of jealous, honestly, the role, what you get to see, the variety. I do think we're at this really interesting inflection point in hospitality where really the iconic brand families, Accor, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, are branching out into non-traditional lodging.
Yeah, definitely. They're one of the best, if not the best, in luxury consumer goods. I went from focusing on hotels to now really doing hospitality. Hospitality is really becoming the experiential business. Everybody's taking a page out of our playbook. So you see what's happening in retail. There's a very big hospitality component. By the way, that's another one of our fastest growing verticals within Accor is our branded residential. We have the second largest branded residential platform worldwide. Tony at Marriott has the largest, and this is, a growing business for us, really, really important. We got into yachts. You have Ritz-Carlton, you have Four Seasons, you have Aman, Hilton. They just signed a strategic agreement with Explora so that you can book a cruise with your Hilton Honors points. So our industry itself is expanding. Our guest no longer becomes the person who's paying for a room night. It's your patron in the restaurant or somebody who's using any facility at your hotel or redeeming your points with you. It's going to be interesting to see how that evolves from something as simple as just point collection and redemption, which is a little bit boring, to now offering you basically lifestyle and networking opportunities and growth opportunities, which is really great.
It's really interesting to see the evolution of loyalty, as you talked about. Now you're competing with credit card companies. And then you have partnerships with them and their competition. I have friends now that the Chase travel program is how they choose hotels, not necessarily is it in a Accor or Marriott or Hilton hotel. It's more where can they get the best bang for their buck from their credit card points.
We're working very closely with them, by the way. One of the greatest discoveries from an Orient Express point of view is at the end of the day, we're offering travel journeys, right? So you can book a 10-day Orient Express journey with us, stay at a hotel, take the train. You stay in Rome at La Minerva, you take La Dolce Vita train across Italy, you stay in our hotel in Venice, and then you'll go from Venice to the south of France on board the Corinthian yacht, right? 10 days. And these are fairly big ticket journeys at the end of the day, okay, travel journeys. And most of this travel with Orient Express is being booked through travel advisors. You mentioned Chase, of course, Centurions. I mean, it's a huge world, Virtuosos, Internovas. This is a world that I really wasn't exposed to before. In fact, if you would have asked me 8 years ago if what happened to travel agents, I remember the travel agencies from the 80s where you would go and book your vacation and you would get the handwritten ticket with the red copy paper. And no, they are alive and kicking and growing. And in fact, they become more and more important so that they can book your trip from, the moment you leave your house to the moment you come back. So we need to work closely with them.
I want to pivot a bit to the international landscape, and I'm going to frame this, and I apologize if I get something wrong. Feel free to correct me. But, when I think about large hotel brands, I think Accor is the dominant player in Europe. You actually have the most hotels in South America, which I don't think most people realize. And I think of Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, IHG kind of saturate the United States. We sprinkle in Wyndham and Choice on the economy, mid-scale side. And then it seems like Asia and Africa are a bit of greenfield, if you will, that everybody's got different swim lanes. You obviously spent a good bit of your time here in the States, but you guys from a footprint in the United States definitely are smaller. As you think about strategy, how are you guys thinking about penetrating the U.S. Canadian market?
That's a great question, and we got to look at it in terms of what value we can bring to an investor's loan. So where we can have a competitive advantage. Our acquisition of Fairmont Raffles was essential, and we're very lucky. I would say one of the biggest pieces of treasure we have at Accor is our brand portfolio. So actually we have the privilege of owning the 3 centennial brands, Raffles being, over a century-old Asian brand, Orient Express being the centennial brand of Europe, and Fairmont being the centennial brand of North America. So that positions us very favorably there. In the United States, we got to be really smart as to how we can grow. Most of our portfolio is still management agreements, and our franchise side of the equation is growing. But when you look at, let's say, how competitive the rest of her peers can be in maybe a premium mid-scale economy, they will eat our cake. Where we can bring something else to the table is in our luxury portfolio and in our lifestyle portfolio through Ennismore. You've seen we've opened our flagship Raffles in Boston. New York's become very important. We just did the Faena there. We announced the Delano. The beauty about the lifestyle portfolio Ennismore is that it is more than hotels. So we have our hotel brands like Hoxton, Delano, etc. The former SBE brands Accor acquired, and they are housed in the Ennismore portfolio. But there's also food and beverage concepts, entertainment concepts, retail concepts. And now what we can do in some of the cities, if we're looking at a mixed-use development, we will actually treat every use as its own business unit. So we will bring the best in class for branded residential, the hotel. We will actually do proper restaurant concepts, entertainment concepts, retail concepts, which we have in-house. The playbook for the US is extremely different to the playbook we have in Europe. There's markets that are very critical to us as well as the rest of our peers, like India at the moment. And it is, going back to what we said at the onset of the conversation, understanding what the geopolitical background looks like. That is very, very important. because we have mostly management agreements, we are also one of the biggest employers of people worldwide. When you're speaking with governments, etc., that is really important. We also need to develop those people, develop the new skill set. So when we're looking at geographies or countries like, for example, Saudi Arabia, we're very much involved in some of the learning institutions that are being set up with the government. That is critical. We've been in Africa for a very long time. You're right about our presence in South America. Australia is also a very big market for us, but we need to grow more in the US, and that's what we will do, but we will grow it with a different playbook.
I was having this debate with another CEO about brand families and where do things go, and I have a thought that in a world of AI, scale really does matter. We're living in this world where market capitalizations are now in the stratosphere, and 40% of the S&P now is 10 companies. I think 70% of 2025 returns was like 7 or 8 companies. I think we're in a period where M&A activity tends to kick up. I think net unit growth, it definitely, when it comes to U.S. publicly traded companies, there's an over-obsession of what's your net unit growth. What do you think the next couple of years look like?
What happens, and we're all victims of this, when we're so large, when we're super tankers, we lose a little bit of the nimbleness. I do think that we need to, all these big companies, one, we need to remain nimble. 2, we got to do what's right for the customer. Now, the way people are thinking about consumption has changed. There's a lot of partnerships right now, Sloan. You don't necessarily need to own or do a big M&A as long as you have a strategic partnership. Like, for example, our peer has just done Hilton and Explora. That's really interesting way of growing the business on both sides of the equation. I think we're going to see more and more partnerships, but bigger may not necessarily be better. I would say you need to have a lot of cash, because these investments are significant. Yes. Technology is not cheap. You also have to rethink your organizational structure, because we got to be more efficient. At the end of the day, as we were saying, the industry is expanding into what is not just the experience economy. I agree with you. There's an obsession, and I guess it's, just a perversion of being part of a public company. Yes, with NUG, and people want to grow at all costs. But at the end of the day, from a shareholder point of view, you want to make sure that your fee per room is growing. That is extremely important. That has to be accretive.
The NUG growth is, I love how large companies use their balance sheet strategically to grow NUG, like giving out big key money or fee. At some point, it's kind of like you're buying. This obsession towards net unit growth needs to be 6 to 7%, where the U.S. supply growth is 0.7%.
Listen, at the end of the day, it's fair game. If you have a very big wallet and you want to put it to use, why not? But as we said, we have to deliver value to the shareholders, and by the way, to your existing hotel owners. So I'm sure they're not going to be happy if all of a sudden we saturate the market and we start cannibalizing their demand if we're not inducing additional demand and growing the bottom line. But just as we are doing strategic partnerships or working with another strategic investor, we will do what we have to do to create value. I think the problem is the whatever metric or KPI people are looking at, it might be very short-lived if we don't really control the net unit growth, or we're growing at all cost. That in the long term is really not that sustainable.
It's interesting how there becomes like you said, a perversion of some of these metrics, just like I think RevPAR is overemphasized in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a great metric. It's one of many. How is Accor thinking about AI?
I think AI has been slow to permeate our industry. It's a company from the Bay Area who visited us here in Paris, and they were showing us this software that they've developed in terms of how to book a trip. The way it was done, it was, number one, incredible. They had very specific financing conditions, meaning you could actually pay installments and all that. So that was interesting. In terms of even how they were booking your plane travel, car rental, your Uber, your hotel stay, making even actually a walking itinerary for you if you wanted to explore a city, when you should be going, because, let's say you're very much into this type of concerts, food, art, it doesn't matter. It will be something done for you specifically, Sloan, and how are you feeling for that trip, what you want to accomplish in that trip. Anyway, the demo blew my mind. It was insane, right? And you could prompt it. And what they were showing us is, because life happens and things happen, you have a delay, you miss your flight, you're too tired, the whole thing would just rebook it and push a notification to you and say, Sloan, you know what? Your flight has just changed, or they just canceled this. We have bad weather. We had terrible snowstorm today. Here, we can rebook you to this flight, and it does it for you. It's almost like you have a personal travel assistant on steroids designed just for you. So what we need to do now is react to it. We have to rethink also how AI is prompted, how we feed information. It's become more democratized, right? Reviews matter. AI sweeps the entire base, right? The roles have changed. How you staff a property have changed. So we're absorbing it. We're trying to be smart about it. One of the things that we're looking at on the ultra luxury side with Orient Express, we're dealing with demanding clients. We need to make sure that we know as much as possible from the client. We can react to the client. We can delight the client too, but their expectations are yay high. We have to be very smart as to how we can leverage this technology.
I think you're totally right. I mean, I think we're in this super accelerated phase where travel imagination, travel research, and then the booking process, call it the digital concierge, is rapidly changing. And we have had very little innovation on premise. The quote I got from Focusrite, that now 1 in 3 globally use AI to do research before making a booking. That was probably, if you went back 3 years ago, almost zero. We were so reliant on the search business, and that's how Booking and Expedia grew their business. Booking.com for, I think, over a decade was the largest customer of Google Ads. Now we're in this phase where all of a sudden, like you said, AI is going to be serving up, and it is a democratization of data. I think that the good thing is it presents an opportunity that could level set the industry some. Reviews, stay experience matter that much more, because used to, someone maybe says, oh, I'm a Bonvoy or a Hilton Honors customer, I'm just going to stay at this hotel because it's in the brand family. But now they can just very easily see, oh, well, they've got real cleanliness issues. So it brings back to the forefront that service matters more than ever.
It gives you access to almost an infinite amount of data. That's what it's information, and that is so critical.
I went to Taiwan for the first time. My wife was born in Taipei. I went with her parents and her 2 brothers for the first time over Thanksgiving holiday. I actually did a lot of research pre-trip to research Taipei, and I kind of surprised them with some knowledge I had about the local area. And it was literally just a couple of inquiries on, I use Claude, what you can just pull in just a matter of 60 seconds.
My mom is a professor. She's 70 years old, and she actually just completed a course on AI. It's incredible. Honestly, it's shaping geopolitics right now.
That's right.
To power these things.
You're totally right. It's a race for energy, because energy and data are the 2 limiting factors now. Compute's not. I want to pivot to people leadership. I have a good friend of mine who is French and had recommended I read a book called Culture Maps by Erin Myers. She talks about how doing business in different countries, there's cultural nuances, and doing business in America is very different. Being part of a family from Asia, I really see this, because, there's ways that Americans do that you come in and, strong energy, very masculine dominant. You go do that in China. You get thrown out of a meeting, or you break rapport automatically, and we don't think about it. You guys are a French company that is global. I want to get your take, because you've had such an international career. You're now living back in Europe.
I find it so refreshing. When I go back to the US, it has been an incredible opportunity moving to France. And by the way, I used to work with our French office when I was at JLL. We had a very big presence here. I had the French team working with French people. I can tell you my experience since I joined Accor is completely different than what I've experienced before. And there was always a point of adaptation. When I worked in London, I remember committing a few faux pas at the beginning. And then I understood the way that the British like to work. And when I worked in Spain, even though, we spoke the same language, etc., it was a very different way of doing business. You got to look at it top down, upside down. So much of it is the explicit, but there's also the underlying currents. The first year, I needed context as to why things were being done a certain way. But the political aspect of things The emotional component of doing business in France is unlike anything else that exists worldwide.
When I think Accor, I think art. And I think that's where the LVMH partnership makes a ton of sense. Didn't really touch on it, but we're running out of time here, but you've been an incredibly successful female leader. We still have a world that is very dominated by men. I mean, the numbers just are the numbers. The vast majority of the boardroom are men. And we now have more women CEOs, more women in the boardroom. How did you see that world, and did you consider it a challenge where you often have bias and have more men in leadership positions?
The way I've looked at it or approached it, Sloan, I've always been the outsider. And because I've always been the outsider since I can remember my life, because remember, I told you I grew up around the world. It's almost like two things have happened. One is you have to have a very strong sense of self, because it doesn't matter where you go. I still have to be Gilda Perez Alvarado, right? I cannot be changing myself for whatever environment. It's just, it is what it is. You have to have a very strong sense of self and a strong set of values and this safety net, unconditional safety net, which is my family, right? Since day one. And so when you've always been the outsider, it's almost like people treat you like you're the underdog. And underdogs have a very different approach to life. Has it bothered me or upset me, or have I felt less because I've been the only woman meeting with 20 other guys? No, but has it driven my competitiveness? I've been in meetings where I've only been asked to pass my slides early on in my career to lead this meeting. For the ladies who are listening to this, or the underdogs or the outsiders who listen to this, one, you got to sit at the table, otherwise you're going to be on the menu. Okay, you always have to sit at the table. And at the beginning, when I was sitting at the table, even when I was an analyst, there was always been a moment in the meeting where I think I'm the boss, even if I'm not. And, it just, for some reason, it plays with your brain, it calms you down, you're in charge, and you're in control of yourself and your feelings. That's it. I have to say, I've been very blessed to have amazing men mentors and sponsors and amazing partners in the journey. But does it annoy me when I don't see enough women? Of course it does. I want to see more and more women. I hope that one day we will see a woman CEO leading one of these, big 4, big 6, big 8 companies.
Or you're still young, so something tells me we will.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll see. But we need to see more of that. We need to value more diversity of opinion and, most importantly, of experience. That's the beauty of having people from different backgrounds. They can approach a situation and bring a completely different point of view. I know we will get more women up there. We gotta build the confidence factor. We're going through a confidence crisis right now with teenage girls. That should not be the case. There was one thing, I've always been relatively confident, but I got the biggest boost to my confidence happened twice. One, when I became a mom, I was 40. And two, when I decided to take a leap of faith and change my entire life to acquire a skill set. And, maybe with a couple of bruises, I've made it. So it's been good.
I love that. Well, amazing advice. Thank you for sharing that. Every podcast we round out with rapid fire. No right or wrong answer. I'll give you a softball. Favorite book?
I like anything geopolitics. There's a World Order book that was written by Henry Kissinger that I think has been probably the most eye-opening. I also love Guns, Germs, and Steel. There's so many.
What about best career advice ever gotten?
Just do it. I think a lot of the time we're looking for this perfect moment and motivation, etc. You just gotta do it. You gotta start. You gotta move. We have a saying in Spanish, que me quiten lo bailado. Nobody can take away your dance, okay, or what you did already. And experiences are what we live for. We talked about it. We used the word already in the podcast. And if it doesn't work, it was a good learning experience. You pivot and you go.
Favorite hotel in the world?
I'm gonna give you one. I love being home, so it'd be my home. But I would say the most magical one, American Colony in Jerusalem. It was magical.
Okay, I'm adding that to the list. Israel's on my short list of places I want to go, so I'm adding that to the list. Favorite country to visit?
I would say beyond Costa Rica, Hong Kong. It's a great place. It's organized chaos, but it works. I love it.
Last one, but you roll the industry forward. What are some predictions maybe you have? We're sitting here together again talking in 2030. 5 years from now, what does the travel industry look like in this new world of AI?
We will see a polarization, or the industry will have very big hotel companies and very niche, perfect niche. The stuff in the middle, the commodity, I think that goes away soon, or I don't know if it will be as successful. I'm always one to believe in specialization and niche, and so I think maybe they win, and we shall see. I don't know.
Well, we close out with what you're not done with. So, what are you not done with?
I'm not done learning, growing. I want to acquire more and more skills. And I'm not done traveling. I want to be more places around the world. I want to see all my friends. I want to meet more people. We live, I think, in the greatest moment of the history of our industry, so we got to take advantage of it.
Well, thank you for being on today.
Thank you, Sloan. I really appreciate it.